Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, whichever it is. I'm Danny O'Malia. I'm Indy's trusted servant. And I want to thank Ryan Henry and INSPIREsmall.biz for this opportunity to speak to all of you. I do customer service training and keynote speaking about customer service. It's all about the culture of the organization. I learned all about how to do all of that, from the age of 9, and I'm 73 now. And from my late father, Joe O'Malia, in the retail grocery business here in Indianapolis. If you're not from Indianapolis, well, we had the best grocery stores with the best service for a long, long time. And I learned from my dad in a roundabout way that it's really all about the culture of the organization. Customer service is going to depend on how good the culture is in the beginning and how well the company is doing when it grows in keeping the culture. And in talking about that, let me show you a very difficult start to our program. And that is a quote from my late daughter, Shannon O'Malia. Shannon O'Malia Hall, that is, was murdered by her ex-husband, who then committed suicide on July 27th of 2014. She, right before that, she had gone through a divorce, and she was talking on Pinterest. Now, I don't do Pinterest, but my youngest daughter, Colleen, does Pinterest. And she found this quote, and it was Shannon's last Pinterest quote. And she was talking about how difficult going through the divorce was with kids and everything, and finances and so on and so forth. And she said, "You've got what it takes, but it'll take everything you've got." Of course, not knowing what she was facing and what the rest of us were going to face within a very short period of time after that Pinterest quote. When my youngest daughter, Colleen, showed me the quote a few years ago, it dawned on me that she was hitting on something that organizations, whether they be not-for-profits or governments or businesses, they don't spend enough time cultivating their cultures and keeping their cultures and building their cultures, because it's a difficult thing to do in the day-to-day dealings with businesses. So we're going to do some culture statements for you now. And the first one is from the late Joe O'Malia. I was recently told that he probably got this from Teddy Roosevelt, but this is something everybody at O'Malia's knew from day one. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Who are the people? Well, they're the customers. They're also the employees. They're also the vendors. They're also the community. And this plaque, which I'm showing you now, is what is a customer and what is a customer not. If you would like a copy of this, why, just email me at dannyomalia@gmail.com. Tell me you saw it on INSPIREsmall.biz, and I will send you a copy of what is a customer and what is a customer not. What is a customer not? When we used to have new employee orientation at O'Malia's back in the day, we would use this example. You are a grocery stocker. You are unloading a truck. You are told a customer is not an interruption of your job. A customer is the reason you have your job. You hear the announcement, all grocery help to the front. You stop unloading the truck, you get up to the front, and you help take care of the customer. You also lighten the load of the other people up front. And so it's not an interruption of your job. It's the reason you have the job. The job will still be there when the rush ends, and you can go back to unloading the truck. Another great culture statement comes from one of my local clients here in Indianapolis, OSIP Optometry. They have 20 to 25 optometry shops around Indianapolis. Lots of doctors, lots of salespeople, fitting people for glasses and so on and so forth. And in every store, they have this poster, laser technology from Mars on the glasses, customer service from Mayberry. And it dawned on me when I walked into an OSIP store before I did the program, who sees the poster every day? The employees of OSIP. Customer service from Mayberry is embedded in that culture. And that's how you can keep opening more stores and keep your culture, is keep embedding the culture and the idea of customer service into the brains and hearts and souls of your employees. The famous business consultant Peter Drucker says this: culture eats strategy for breakfast. And to give you an example of that, we'll show you a couple of cultures that are going well and maybe one or two that aren't. This culture at this restaurant wasn't going so well. I don't know where the restaurant is, but I think of myself as the owner of that restaurant, walking into my restaurant and seeing that on one of my tables. And I'd have to say that the former customer of my restaurant used the tools that were available to him or her to send a very succinct message to me about my customer service and maybe about my culture. Now, do I hire bad people? Do I not train them well enough? Do I not have enough help in the store? And of course, these days with restaurants, that's a big problem, right? Maybe all three of those, but something's wrong with me as the owner of the business if I get that message from a customer. As opposed to that, this is the OK Cafe in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. I was on a baseball trip with some friends. I had a high school buddy in Atlanta. He said, go eat at the OK Cafe. And we had one of the nicest experiences. There's like 8 people. We want to get to the ball game on time. The place is busy, best service, very good food. And here's one reason why the OK Cafe has great service. You walk in there and there's caricatures of the 15 employees who've been with the OK Cafe for 35 years or more. That's another culture builder. And that's one reason why the OK Cafe gives great service. Several years ago, I was at a basketball tournament in South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina, and we spent some time at a bar called the John King Bar. And after our first visit to the John King Bar, the waitress brought this little note to the table. And it was just such a personal, nice thing that I decided to save it and share it with everybody. If you're ever in Charleston, South Carolina, or you're ever in Buckhead, Atlanta, why, go to the OK Cafe or the John King Bar for some great customer service and some really good food. As opposed to that, let's pick on a company that you all know pretty well. I don't like dealing with Best Buy. For the longest time, I haven't liked dealing with Best Buy. And I'll give you an example of a culture that had to have been good at some point. Because they're so big, right? And they are very good at things like technology and so forth at some level, but their customer service is sorely lacking. One of my clients, it was a restaurant chain of about 140 fast food restaurants, and I had the 50 people that run the company. It's a restaurant chain that's in 4 states. And I asked them when I was speaking if they could give me an example of bad service. And boy, did this one guy pipe up, and he said, I want to tell you about Best Buy. And I said, good, I already don't like Best Buy. What's your story? Here's his story. He had sworn off Best Buy just like I have. He saw an ad in the paper for a personal computer, and he wanted to give that to his son or daughter to go off to college with. Okay. It was a price he could not pass up, but he still didn't trust Best Buy. So he called the local Best Buy store. This was in Terre Haute, Indiana, and said, do you have the computer at that price on the shelf now? Yes, we do. We have quite a few of them. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Please don't sell out. He rushes to the Best Buy store. He gets the PC. He takes it to the counter. The girl starts typing. Now, you've been someplace where somebody starts typing and they keep typing and nothing's happening. And this girl finally looks at him, and a very friendly young lady, I'm sorry, I can't sell you this computer. Why? It's not in the system. Well, somebody put an ad in the paper, and somebody on the phone told me you'd sell it to me, and here it is. Why can't you sell it to me? Get me the manager. The manager comes up. It's the guy who talked to him on the phone and told him, yeah, we got plenty of them. He can't put it in the system. So here's a company with a great marketing strategy, put an ad in the paper, right? Local paper at a great price. They've got the computer in the store, but somehow between marketing and the technology people that put it in the system, it broke down. And these people at the store either didn't want to help or didn't have a way to help, an 800 number or something they could do to say, can you get this in the system so we can start selling these things? That's bad culture. I have a suggested reading list. And if you'd like to see the suggested reading list, why email me at dannyomalia@gmail.com. Tell me that you saw me on Inspire Small Biz, and I will send you the suggested reading list. And the book, The Nordstrom Way, is on the suggested reading list. And one of the executives with Nordstrom said, you can't teach culture. You have to live it. You have to experience it. You have to share it. You have to show it. And that starts at the top. If you got a grocery company and you're the president and you walk in the store and the register's backed up, you better start bringing up some groceries or sacking some groceries. Okay. Use that to your advantage in your business, and you'll start having a great culture. You got to walk the walk and talk the talk both. Another great culture, I think, is Chick-fil-A. And this statement comes from Dan Cathy, the son of Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A. And it says, our light shines brightest when it isn't on. And of course, that refers to the fact that they're closed on Sunday. I know a lot of you, just like I have driven into a Chick-fil-A on Sunday and said, darn it, but more power to them. Well, some friend of mine sent me this. It's pretty funny. Chick-fil-A has 37 cars in line, wait time 1:54 seconds. Workers make it rain condiments on me, treat me like I am their second favorite cousin. McDonald's, 2.5 cars in line, wait time, first half hour of an NBA Finals game. You get the idea. That doesn't happen all the time at McDonald's, but it does happen. But it never happens at Chick-fil-A, right? Back to Nordstrom, one of the things in the Nordstrom Way that I found fascinating was their organizational pyramid, which, as you can tell, is upside down. It's upside down because they put the biggest number of people at the top. That's the customers. And the second biggest number of people, the people that work in the store, next. And they put the big shots at the bottom. And they say, we got one rule: use good judgment in all situations. And that's what they let their employees do. Rules give employees another reason to say no to customers. That's why we hate rules. You do have to have some rules. Back in the grocery days, we were a little strict about the rules about dress code because we wanted our employees to look professional, but we were real loose on the rules about, say, giving refunds because we wanted customers taken care of, and we didn't want employees sweating whether to give a refund or not. I love this slide as a former English teacher. And if you're not from Indianapolis, you may be unfamiliar with the One America sign in front of the One America building downtown Indianapolis, but it has a different saying on it every week. And what's cool about this is the employees of the insurance company, One America, turn the sayings in. And they give the employee who they choose each week some kind of gift certificate or small gift, but that's part of culture. At any rate, I didn't have my camera with me when I first saw this on the sign. So the next time I went down, I took a picture of the sign. Forget what's on the sign, but look at what is above it. I used to give a 25-word spelling test to my 7th and 8th graders back in the day every Friday. And the one spelling rule everybody remembers is I before E except after C. Here's what the sign said: I before E except after C, weird. It doesn't work all the time. It works 99.5% of the time. But as a speller, we got to know when it doesn't work. As an employee, you got to know when you should break a rule to help a customer or another employee for that matter. This was a really interesting, this guy was a George W. Bush imitator. And I did a program for Trade Bank USA in St. Petersburg, Florida. And he was the entertainment during the evening cocktail hour. It was a 2-day thing. And he talked about how he had been a failed actor, couldn't quite get anything, but he realized he looked a lot like George W. Bush. And he started practicing and standing in front of a full-length mirror and watching hours and hours of George W. Bush videotape. And he's now doing comedy as the world's leading George W. Bush imitator at things like conferences for companies. And he says, failure's only failure when you fail to learn by it. He was a failed actor, but he's a successful, I guess you might say it, comedian/speaker. Another thing about culture and about service is the value. that a company brings to its customers. John Ruskin, of course, was an old-time English economist and philosopher, and he talked a lot about value, and he has a value equation. Value equals quality plus service divided by price. Price is what you pay, value is what you get for what you pay, and value is really what you ought to be looking at, and value is what you want your business to offer. Now, if you're Walmart or you're White Castle, the value might be in that you're the cheapest. If you're anybody else, you got to bring more to the table than just price. You got to bring value, which customer service. We ran an ad back in the day at O'Malley's where we compared the price of our steak to the price of, I don't want to name the national chain that's headquartered in Cincinnati, but you know who they are. People were saying, well, your steaks are more expensive than that chain. So we took a picture of their steak with the tail left on, the one on the right, and then took a picture of our steak with the tail cut off. And by the way, the tail is all inedible. It's all fat and gristle. And our steak was higher quality and less expensive. That's value. Okay, that brings us to the trust equation. And that is taken from this book, The Nordstrom Way. Did I hold it up right? Okay, I got to remember to hold these books up over my face. I'm not used to doing that. This is a great book for salespeople, but it's not about sales. It's about the service you give the client after the sale. And the trust equation is real simple. You are aiming for trustworthiness in the relationship between you and your client. And to do that, you've got to have credibility, reliability, and intimacy, and then low self-orientation. What I mean by self-orientation, that was the Best Buy story. They're making things easier for themselves, tougher for their customers and their employees. This is a great book. I highly recommend it. We want to talk a little bit about telling the truth. And this is, again, part of the culture of the organization. In government, in business, and in not-for-profit, and in the world in general, there's an awful lot of CYA, okay? And what you have to do in a great culture is tell the truth all the time to your employees, to your customers, to the community, to the vendors, to everybody. And the only piece of nonfiction the only piece of fiction, I should say, on my suggested reading list is Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. In Atlas Shrugged, which was written in 1957 and foresaw the takeover of business throughout the United States by the government, the folks who used to run the businesses, steel, railroads, whatever other businesses were, automobiles, they would sit and commiserate with one another about how difficult everything had become for them. Now, this book is 1,070 pages long. I had to pick it up and put it down 3 or 4 times to get through it, but it's well worth reading. And we're talking about telling the truth here. If you lie, the price one pays is the destruction that which the game was intended to serve. The man who lies to the world is the world's slave from then on. I want to tell you a story about a lie I told. Have you heard this one? When I was about 10 years old and still hated girls, but I was beginning to wonder about it. There was a good friend of mine that lived next door, Stevie, and there was a girl about my age that lived behind me, Susie, and I took Susie's doll and I threw it up on Stevie's house roof. Then I went out and played baseball all afternoon, and that night I forgot about it, and that night it rained, and the doll washed off the roof, ruined, and I watched Stevie's mom spank him for stealing Susie's doll and throwing it off on the roof. And I never said a thing about it. And I was about 10 years old, and I'm 73 years old, and it bothers me to this day. So that's what that means. I am a member of Rotary International, the Indianapolis Rotary Club, proud member. And every week at every Rotary meeting in the world, and there are thousands of them and hundreds of thousands of Rotary members, we say the 4-way test. First, is it the truth? Everything else runs from the truth. It's got to be the truth. Got to be truthful with your employees. Got to be true with your customers. Truthful with your customers. If you're truthful with the employees, then they'll be truthful with the customers and with you. Training is very, very important, and especially today's world where companies are dying to get people behind the cash register, in the kitchen, wherever the business is. You still got to take the time to train people properly. It's very tempting to just throw people to the wolves, but you're going to tear up your customer service and tear up your culture if you don't train people properly. CFO to CEO, what if we spend the money to train them and they leave? And the CEO says, what if we don't and they stay? That's what happened at Best Buy, apparently, in that situation that I described before. Okay. Empowerment is so awfully, awfully important. People don't realize how important empowerment is in their business. You got to empower your employees like Nordstrom does, like Chick-fil-A does, to make their own decisions. Mary Kay Ash, of course, we all know who she was. Secret of my business was hiring really nice people and then allowing them to be as nice as they can be. That's empowerment. Now, the greatest coach of all time in any sport, in my opinion, is John Wooden. John Wooden guided UCLA's basketball team to 12 out of 14 NCAA championships between the years of about 1964 to 1975. Maybe it was 11 out of 13. Some 20 years ago, Florida won the thing twice in a row, and people thought that was cool, but not as cool as 11 out of 13. He did it with this philosophy, and if you're from Indiana, he's from Martinsville, Indiana, Purdue University, All-American, and he says this: I'm not looking for great players. I'm looking for players that make the team great. One of the books, I got 2 books from John Wooden on the suggested reading list. This is one of them. This is where I got the quote. This is a great book. It's about life and business and doing the right thing. And it's a lot about teamwork. I'm not looking for great players. I'm looking for players that make the team great. And once he started winning with players that make the team great, he started getting great players who helped make the team even better. And probably the greatest of all was the NBA's all-time leading scorer, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And one of the books on my suggested reading list is Coach Wooden and Me, by a 7-foot black kid from the Bronx who played for a short white guy from Martinsville, Indiana, and in the late 60s. And somehow or other, they had the kind of relationship where the front cover of the book shows Wooden coaching Lou Alcindor, back at UCLA in the late 60s. And the back cover of the book shows Kareem Abdul-Jabbar ushering Coach Wooden onto Coach Wooden court at UCLA shortly before his death at nearly the age of 100. Hey, that's a long-term relationship. I guess Wooden didn't do a lot of lying to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and vice versa. JFK, united, there's little we can't do. Divided, there's little we can do. Teamwork. Harry Truman, you can accomplish anything in life as long as you're not worried about who gets the credit. Too much worry about who gets the credit is going to lead to a bad culture. Now, one of the things that businesses don't understand very well, apparently Best Buy didn't understand it. The Star doesn't understand it. The best customer is the one you already have. We used to show this to the O'Malley employees at New Employee Orientation, how much a customer with 3 kids spends at our grocery stores over a 20-year period. And then maybe even after the kids get out, if they still live in the area, they might not spend as much, but over a long time, they would spend, maybe $250,000 to $300,000. If we did something to run that family off in the first year of our relationship, what did it cost us? $250,000 to $300,000. That's a lot of money. It's better to invest in good people, train them right, empower them so that they take care of those customers. Best customer is the one you already have. Don't run them off like Best Buy and the Star ran me off. You want to be in the pole position. For you non-racing fans, the pole position is the first fastest qualifier and the guy with the best chance to win the race. And a good example of that, keep going. Stop right there. A good example of that is Nordstrom. Back to Nordstrom. Great story about Nordstrom. A very, very harried businessman runs into a Nordstrom store at about 6 o'clock one night in a three-piece suit, and he's in a big hurry, and he goes to the perfume section, and he asks the girl if they have, I don't know what the name of the perfume would be, and she said, "I'm sorry, we don't carry it, but I might be able to help you." He goes, "Well, it's my anniversary, and I'm meeting my wife for dinner in an hour, and I haven't done anything yet. So I'm in a lot of trouble." And she said, "Are you going to be in the shopping center for another half hour?" "Yeah, we're having dinner right across the street. I got to go to the candy store and the flower store." She said, "Come back in a half hour. I think I can have the perfume for you." She leaves her counter, asks the girl next to her to watch her counter, goes down to Macy's at the other end of the mall, which she knows has the perfume, comes back, wraps it up. Now, so this is teamwork. This is somebody breaking the rules too. You're not supposed to leave your counter, but she's taking care of a customer. And he comes back and he's got the flowers and the candy, and now he's got the perfume. She's wrapped it up. She sells it to him for the exact price that she bought it at the Macy's store. Now, remember, Best Buy couldn't even figure out what to charge somebody. Okay. But this girl somehow was able to fudge around whatever system they had and take care of this guy. And of course, they were in the pole position. He didn't go to Macy's that night, not to put Macy's down. He went to the place that he knew he had the best shot of getting him out of trouble with his wife. Let's talk about handling complaints. Abraham Lincoln said it this way: best way to eliminate an enemy is to turn him into a friend. Handling complaints is a good way to make lemonade out of lemons. Joel O'Malley taught me how to handle complaints in 1975. If you email me, I will send you the steps to handling customer complaints. They work. They take a lot of effort. But in this day and age, I will add to the list that probably the most important thing is number 5. And back when he told me this in 1975, most of the complaints were phone calls. Some were snail mail letters. Okay. And he said, if the customer calls headquarters here and you're not in a meeting and you're not on the phone, take the call. She might have a complaint. She might have a compliment. She might be asking for a donation. You take the call and your name's on the door of the store. You just beat the competition all to heck right there. And he was right. Return all calls unbelievably fast. Return all emails, return all texts unbelievably fast. And by the way, here's a little tip for all of you young people. Sometimes it's time to pick up the phone and actually talk to the customer. Reputations are built by customer advocacy, and customer advocates are created one customer at a time. One of the great customer service books that I like to tout is Satisfaction by J.D. Power and Associates. And as you can see, if I'm holding this upright with all those, I use this book a lot. And there's a lot of great and bad customer service stories. And I'm going to tell you one of the good ones. It's about the car rental industry. And they go to great pains to tell you that Hertz and Avis, they rank just about even in all categories in the car rental industry. They got enterprise car rental up here, kind of Hertz and Avis next level. Okay, of course, they're the biggest. A customer was flying from one coast to another on a Sunday to make a sales presentation on Monday morning. He didn't want to make the trip. He was missing his kid's all-star game or some such thing, or recital or whatever, but he had to make the trip. And he got to the airport okay, but it was raining. And he had rented from Avis. No, he had rented from Hertz. So he got his luggage, he got his computer bag, he rolled him through the airport to the Hertz bench under a bubble and waited for the Hertz van to show up. It didn't. But the Avis van went by, and the Avis van came by a second time, and the Avis van driver stopped and said, "I noticed you sitting here in the rain. Can I help you?" "Well, I don't think so. I rented from Hertz." "Well, get on and I'll take you to Hertz." Now, you can almost guess part of the rest of the story. This guy gets on, tries to dry off, and says, "Say, does Avis have any midsize? I mean, you're here and they're not." The guy calls, yeah, we got mid-sized cars. Take me to Avis. That's just the first half of the story. The next morning after the sales call, he's driving back to the airport. His secretary makes all the travel arrangements for the 20 international salespeople at this company. He calls her and says, change all the rental car reservations from Hertz to Avis, because Hertz dropped the ball and one Avis guy was empowered, well-trained, nice guy. That's what can happen. And Martin Luther King said this: everyone can be great because everyone can serve. And I'm going to end with 3 stories of people that you wouldn't think should make such a difference to a business, but did. One of them happened at O'Malley Food Markets. We had a young man working for us. Well, he was in his 40s, but he was like Rain Man. He had a brain injury as a child, and he could remember the birthdays of every kid in the store that came in with her parents, his or her parents, up to about age 16. And he'd always have a stick of gum or a lollipop or something for that kid for his birthday. He had that kind of relationship with his customers. At some point after we sold our company, and after the company we sold our company to had taken over, so this is 3 generations past O'Malley Food Markets, the company that had bought the company that bought us decided to flip the front doors of this grocery store that he worked in. That was 25 years old. And they had been entering on the right and leaving on the left for 25 years. For whatever reason they did it, they thought they had a good operational reason to do it, but they didn't inform the employees they were doing it or tell them the reason behind it. And so the customers were angry because they couldn't get used to going in the outdoor. And the customer that was really angry, this young fella, Kenny, was sacking her groceries, and she had about $250 worth of groceries. I was standing right there. She had steaks and bottles of wine and all the expensive stuff, and 3 little kids. And one little girl was limping around. She'd hurt her foot going in the wrong door. And the customer was yelling at the store manager in the office, who was listening intently. And Kenny was waiting for the lady to take a breath. And when she did, this was the register farthest from the front door and closest to the office in the grocery store. Kenny got her eye, started pushing the cart towards the front door and said, pretend like you're driving in England, pretend like you're driving in England. And the lady, she was sweating and crying, and she stopped and she looked at the store manager and said, I'm sorry, I know this wasn't your decision. And Kenny saved the day. The least important guy in the store was the most important guy in the store. The second story is about John F. Kennedy and NASA. And while John F. Kennedy was president, sometime from 1961 to 1963, he was touring NASA headquarters in Houston. And of course, computers were as big as God knows back then. The media was still there. The Secret Service was still there. And he met all the astrophysicists you could imagine, engineers and everything. And he saw a guy sweeping the floor. He saw another voter. So he went over to talk to the guy sweeping the floor. And he asked the guy, of course, the guy saw the president coming and stood to attention and shook hands. And he asked the guy, what is your job here? And the guy said, Mr. President, my job is to help put a man on the moon. And some 6 to 8 years later, we put a man on the moon because there was a culture there that even the guy mopping the floor or sweeping the floor understood what the goal was. That's culture. And finally, from the book Raving Fans, which is a real quick read with a lot of great stories, I introduce you to Dennis the cab driver. Dennis the cab driver owned his own cab, and he was sitting at the cab stand at the airport about 50th in line and wasting a lot of time. And he said to himself, he's empowering himself, right? He said to himself, I got to do something to get out of this rut. And so he thought about it, and he decided to clean his car inside and out, cleaner than Mike's or Crew Car Wash clean. If you're from the Midwest, you know about Mike and Crew Car Washes. And after about a month, he'd had about 6 or 7 people get in the car and say, gee, this is the cleanest cab I've ever been to. Do you have any cards? And he goes, I should get some cards. So he got some cards. And he also said to himself, I'm on to something. What else can I do besides have a clean car. He realized that let's pretend it's Indianapolis and he's at the airport and the customer is going to stay downtown. He's in town for a convention or whatever, business. And he wants to know, are the Pacers in town tonight? Is the symphony playing tonight? What's going on? And some customers want him to shut up. And so he says, if you want to chit chat, we will. And if you want me to be quiet, we will. And that seems to be causing more people to ask him for his card. He then decides that he will put, a daily newspaper, a Wall Street Journal, a Sports Illustrated, and a Time magazine, in the right behind the front seat where the guy can read if he wants on the way to the airport, or the gal. And then he decides he's going to put 15 different kinds of music on the radio and offer them the chance to listen to, whatever they want to listen to, or talk, or sports, or whatever. And by the time he's done all of that, he has one final idea, and several months have passed. The final idea is he gets a styrofoam cooler, loads it with bottles of water, and gives everybody a bottle of water. And he says, I don't sit at cab stands anymore. I book appointments. So you got Martin Luther King, you got John F. Kennedy, and you got Dennis the cab driver. That's empowerment at the lowest level of the organization, but it's really, really important. So culture, teamwork, empowerment, telling the truth, communications is so important, letting folks know what's going on. If you'd like to talk more, give me a call, 317-413-9062, DannyO'Malia@gmail.com. Once again, thanks to Inspire Small Biz and Ryan Henry for the opportunity to talk to you all, and God bless.